Anthony asked whether he should be worried about this NCAA investigation as a Michigan fan. You should always be concerned because there's no predictability with the governing body of this sport. Unfortunate though it may be. But the news last week came out that the NCAA was investigating Michigan. And at the time, I looked at the news and I kind of brushed it off because we've seen so many fiery headlines lead to fizzling when it comes to actual punitive measures that have been taken against programs lately. I'm not saying I want to see anything happen to Michigan. Quite the opposite. But today, Dan Wetzel on Yahoo came out with an article, and the headline was essentially negotiations between the University of Michigan and the NCAA had broken down. Now, to take you back to last week, one of the allegations is a level 1 violation against Jim Harbaugh. And that level 1 violation, to save you some time, was essentially he lied to investigators about, what was it, Jesse? It was like during COVID, there was some stuff you weren't allowed to do, and they were doing it, and then he lied to investigators. Really, in my mind, some minor stuff. One of those classic Watergate. It's the cover-up. It's not the crime. It's the cover-up. Well, here's the thing. The NCAA is not the federal government, and they really don't have necessarily the power or well, I'm not going to necessarily praise our federal government either, but my point is that leads us to today. That's the backstory. That leads us to today. Dan Wetzel releases an article today, and in it, he reveals that negotiations between the NCAA and Michigan have broken down because essentially the NCAA walked in the door, sat down and said, okay, Jim, you got a level 1 violation on your hands, but we can make it a lot easier on you. And then, they slide the piece of paper across the desk. If you'll just sign this document that admits you lied to us. And back in the day, this used to work because back in the day, people who were ill-equipped to handle the NCAA dealt with the NCAA, i.e. coaches and athletic directors. These days, lawyers are in the room. And any lawyer worth his or her salt would have looked at Jim Harbaugh and told him to do exactly what he did do. And that is throw up the double-barrel middle finger and say, I'm not signing that. You show us whatever you have. We'll just move on. Cease negotiation. You send us the letter of infractions, LOI, whatever that stands for. You send us that, and we'll go through this the way you want to go through this. We'll hand it the classical way. Jim Harbaugh said, I'm not signing anything. And the level 1 violation is built around an allegation that he lied to him, which leads to the natural follow-up question of how in the world are they about to prove that guy lied? Because Jim Harbaugh's entire stance is maybe he did things not knowing that they were illegal, and he, I think in some cases, said, I don't even remember it, and so how are you going to prove that? They're not going to. Let me spoil the ending for you. They're not going to prove that. And so you're going to learn, I think in due time, that Jim Harbaugh in Michigan took the only line that you should ever take with the NCAA now and moving forward, especially when they try those sorts of tactics, and that is to not give an inch. Don't budge an inch with these people. If you, in the words of Jim Ross, if you could buy them for what they're worth and sell them for what they think they're worth, you wouldn't have to work again a day in your life. That's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with NCAA investigators. Now, I am not here to wave the maize and blue flag and claim that everything was followed to the letter of the law up there. I am just trying to point out the glaring hypocrisy that exists in this sport right now, where the last thing the governing body has is control over anything. And it's like being pulled over for doing like 73 and a 65, and as you're on the side of the interstate, multiple crotch rockets go by at 120, and the cop's oblivious. I didn't hear anything. Sir, could I see your license and registration, please? And you're like, what am I sitting over here for? I'm not handing you anything. Well, that's Jim Harbaugh right now, and that's Michigan. And that's the world that they're existing in. Boom, boom, boom. There goes, I'm not going to name universities, but there goes some other universities out there, and here I am on the side of the interstate for doing 73 and a 65. Oh, and by the way, I didn't even see the speed limit sign. I didn't even know I was speeding. Sir, could you just sign this piece of paper that said you were speeding so that we really don't have to do our work? You can do it for us. No, I'm not going to do that. Well, aren't you scared of what we'll do to you? No, not necessarily. I don't think you have any teeth anymore. Peel back those lips. That's what I thought. Gums. No teeth to be found. The NCAA won't have teeth on this. Not very much is going to happen to Michigan. And at most, it will probably be related to like a Jim Harbaugh suspension or maybe a Jim Harbaugh fine. Because if it's anything else, the University of Michigan should drop the full legal weight of that university on the NCAA. That's what they should. And they shouldn't have to do it because their conference office should do it for them. But even if the Big Ten doesn't acquiesce, because there's currently not a commissioner there, the University of Michigan should. So I hope I haven't been unclear as to whose side I'm on in this entire transaction.
Thanks for watching, guys. Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Make sure you like the video and please subscribe to the channel. Not just for me, that's how we keep this entire thing free.